Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Ultimate Cybersecurity Lab Project. This is episode 7 and the final episode in building the base layer of this entire lab. Today we are going to expand our lab to the cloud. In all of the other previous episodes, we built a huge amount of different tools. We built a pfSense firewall, we have the Hive, Cortex, Nessus, securityonion, Kali, caldera, wazuh, and then we've got Docker, Portainer, we've loads of containers here. We have an Active Directory domain, we've Windows machine, we've Metasploitable. Over the last few months of building this lab, we've built a huge amount of tools. Today is the day we're going to expand. So we're going into Azure, we'll create a VNet there, we'll create a site-to-site VPN between our pfSense firewall and the VNet within Azure. That way we can expand to the cloud and build whatever we want. This just turns our lab into a limitless learning machine, so you can do whatever you want in the cloud. So if you've been following along, and I hope you have, this should be a good one. So let's go through all of the things that we need to do. So on the left, I have created an account in Azure and I have a subscription. And within that subscription, I'm going to create a resource group. And then within the resource group, I'm going to create everything I need. So I'm going to create a VNet with the address space of 10.30.0.0/16. I'm going to have 2 subnets. Whenever we create the Azure VPN Gateway, we need to have a gateway subnet. So that is going to be 10.30.0.0/27. And I'm also going to create a second subnet that I'll use to create like Windows VMs and stuff. So that is going to be on the 10.30.1-0/24. As part of the VPN, we also need a local network gateway. Over here in this other section, we have my on-prem network. So my home firewall is using Ubiquiti. So I use UI technology across all my house, across my switches. So on this firewall, I'm going to have to make some changes. Because this pfSense firewall is connected to my switches behind my external firewall, this kind of acts like an internal firewall. So I need to add some port forwarding on my Ubiquiti firewall to point to the pfSense firewall. The other issue we have with my home network is my ISP only gives me a dynamic public IP. So we need to set up something like a Dynamic DNS service, and I'm going to use Duckdns for that. There's quite a lot of networking concepts within this setup. So if you're not a network person, don't worry, we're going to go through it each step at a time, so you can just follow along and complete this as well. Most firewalls or most home routers out there will allow you to do some sort of port forwarding, and what we need to do is quite minimal anyway, so you should have a device that's supported. So if you look at the tasks along the left here, so what we're going to do first, we're going to go into Azure, we'll create the resource group, the VNet, and then we'll add the subnets, and then we're going to create our VNet gateway and the local network gateway. Then we'll go to my external firewall and I will configure the port forwarding for UDP 500 and the UDP 4500. And then I will also make the WAN interface a fixed IP. I can show you how I'm going to do that. Then we're going to go back to Azure and I'm going to create my VPN connection. And then we're going to go to Duckdns. We will configure the Dynamic DNS and make those changes. We'll add a domain and we'll get our token that we need for setting that up. We will then go to the pfSense firewall. We will configure Dynamic DNS, and then we will configure the site-to-site VPN and the firewall rules. And then we will go to Azure and configure VM. There is quite a lot to do as part of this last video, so I'll break it up and hopefully we can just fly through it. First part is to make the changes that we need to in Azure. If you don't have an Azure account for this, I'll put this link in the description below. You can just go to azure.microsoft.com and click on Start Free. That will bring you through the setup and how you create a new account in Azure. I already have an account in Azure and I've logged in, so I'm ready to go. So whenever you get logged in, search for resource group at the top, and I'll bring you here. And then we're just going to click on Create, and I'm just going to create a new resource group for this. So I'm going to call this Lab Prod. I'm going to create mine in the UK South. I'm going to click Review and Create, and I'm just going to click Create. Okay, so that is here. So we have a resource group. Let's create a new network. So go up to the very top, search for virtual network. I'm going to create a new network. I'm going to select my subscription. I'll select the resource group that I already created. I'm just going to call this Lab VNet 01. That's going to be fine, and click on next. Next again. Now my address space here is 10.30, so I'm just going to modify this and I'm going to add 3 there. You can see it does create a default subnet as well, so I'm going to modify this as well. And I am just going to use 1030.1. And I'm going to have a /24. So the address space is 1030.00/16. The default subnet that we're going to create is 1031.0/24. Click on save. That looks good. Click next. Review and create. And then create. Okay, so the VNet is created. So let's go back and check out what we have to do. So we create a resource group, create a VNet. We've added the subnet. Let's go back over to Azure, and I'm just going to add that additional subnet that I will need for the virtual network gateway. So let's click here, go to resource. So this is me within my lab VNet that I've set up. Under subnets, you can see the subnet that we created. Now, if we want to create a subnet for the gateway, you can see they've already added it here. There is an option to do this. So we'll just click on gateway subnet. It's going to use a /24. We only really need a /27, but we can just leave it as /24. Click on save. Perfect. So yours should look like this. Now that we've done that, let's go to the virtual network gateway. Virtual network gateway, which is here. I'm going to click on create. There's one thing I should just say before we even get started and create anything more, is that the virtual network gateway, the VM, the local network gateway, I think these all will cost you money. You will need to pay for these things. We will create the very bare minimum, but there will be a fee for using these. And I have actually a number of different links here. I've got the VPN Gateway pricing. Mine is in pounds, so I'm just going to choose UK South, how much it's going to cost by the hour. I'm going to choose the very basic, the bare minimum. So it is going to be like 15p per hour. I'm not going to leave mine turned on anyway. I'm going to build this VPN, play around with it today, and then maybe, we'll see, I might delete it and then just build it again whenever I need to. But I'll put these links in the description below, so just remember that you will have to pay for some of these services. So let's go back. I'm going to go to the virtual network gateway setup. VNet Gateway Lab, that's going to be fine. I'm going to choose UK South. This is the SKU, so this is what I meant around the costs. So I'm going to choose generation 1. And I'm going to choose VPN Gateway 1. The virtual network we need is this Lab VNet 1. You will see that it has automatically found the gateway subnet that we created previously. Public IP address, you do need 2 public IPs as well. So I'm just going to click on create new. Public IP 01. Hub 02. Okay. Configure BGP, we're going to leave that as disabled. Okay, so let me go to the top so you can see this. So subscription to Azure 1, the VNet Gateway, the name, the regions UK South. I'm going to choose generation 1, VPN Gateway 1, Lab VNet 01, and then you have the 2 public IPs. So create new, and let's go review and create. The VNet Gateway will take about 40 minutes to create, by the way. So once you hit create, that's going to go and deploy that, and then you're just going to have to walk away and come back. So let's look at the tasks and what we have to create. So we need to create the resource group. We've done that, VNet, done that, the subnet and the VNet gateway. I've also created the local network gateway here, but let's leave that until we've done the Duckdns, because we will need to add the DNS name for our home internet. I can show you what that means, but let's leave that one for now. While the VNet Gateway is deploying, let's go and get logged into our pfSense firewall. I've opened up Kali, I'm logged into my pfSense firewall. What I want here is my current public IP address for my pfSense firewall. And as you can see, the WAN IP address for this firewall is 1096.12.217. That's going to be different from previous videos because my home network has changed. I no longer use the 192.168.0 range for my home network. I've built Ubiquity throughout my whole house, and now my dedicated subnet for this lab and stuff is this 1096.12, so that's why it's just got this different IP address. So what I need to do though is I need to know this IP address because I need to configure the port forwarding on the Ubiquity side to send all the traffic to that IP. And the other thing I want to do is I want to make that a static IP for this firewall. I'm not going to do that on this firewall, I'm going to do that from Ubiquity side. if you want to configure a static IP address for your WAN on the firewall itself, all you have to do is go to interfaces and WAN, and then from here you need to just remove DHCP, click on static IPv4, and then just configure your IP address here. It'll show up here. For me, I want to do that and control it from the Ubiquiti side. Now I know my IP address. Let's double check again. So it's 10.96.12.217. I'm going to go back to the Ubiquiti firewall, and in here I'm going to do security and port forwarding. I'm going to start configuring those rules that I need. So what that basically means is that anything that's going to hit my external firewall on those ports, Ubiquiti is just going to send it to the WAN interface on the pfSense firewall. So let's create this new rule. I'm going to call this UDP 500 pfSense. It's from any, that's okay. So 500 for the port number. Forward IP is 10.96.12.217. The forward port is going to keep it 500. The protocol is going to be UDP, and I'm going to enable logging. So hit add entry. Okay, so I'm going to create another one. I'm going to again port number any is from forward IP 10.96.12.217. The port is 4500. Protocol again UDP, and enable logging, and just click on add entry. If you want to do that in your home firewall or whatever version you're using, just look for port forwarding, and that's pretty much what you need to enter. It's going to be from anywhere you want to be sending it to. The forward IP will be the other device in your home network you want to send the traffic to, and then the port number, so it has to be UDP 500 and 4500. To make the WAN interface IP on the pfSense static, for me, all I have to do on Ubiquiti side is click into that device. Under settings, there is an option for fixed IP address. So if I tick that, that means that that device is always going to get that IP, and it does it by its MAC address. Whenever it sees it, it knows what IP it has to get. So click on apply changes, and that should be it done. The other problem that we have is most home internets, your ISP will give you a dynamic public IP. So that means that the IP address will change. Sometimes it changes every week or every day. It really depends. To get around that, we can use Dynamic DNS. We will configure the VPN from Azure to connect out to an FQDN. I'm going to use Duckdns as the DDNS service for that. So what happens is the pfSense firewall will reach out to Duckdns, and it will tell it every 30 seconds what our public IP address is. That way the VPN traffic will always know exactly what our public IP is right now. I hope that makes sense. But to do that, I've logged into my Kali machine. I've went to the Duckdns website, which is www.duckdns.org. You need to sign in using the service. I've just signed in using Twitter. You will see here you have your account, and then you have a token. We get a subdomain, so I'm just going to call mine and click on add domain. This is one side of the setup is done. So now what we need to do is we need to make sure the pfSense firewall can reach out to Duckdns and keep that updated. So let's go and do that part. So I'm just going to open up a new tab. I'm going to click on install, open a new tab, click here, and then I am going to select pfSense. So you should see it here in the list. It told me exactly what I have to do. So I'm going to copy this big long piece of text here, and then I'm going to go back to the pfSense firewall. If I go up to the top, I'm going to click on services, and I'm going to go to Dynamic DNS. I'm going to click on add. In this service type, I'm going to drop this down to custom. I'm going to move all the way down here to update URL, and I'm going to simply paste that in. Now you will notice from this, it automatically included the domain that I created previously and my token. Now, you probably can't see this because I blurred this bit out, but you will see it whenever you create yours. There is a token and there is a name that represents your domain. And in the result match, just make sure you type in OK. Perfect, so that works. You should see the status as a green tick. So what that does, the pfSense firewall will reach out to Duckdns I think it's every 30 seconds or whatever. And what it does, it just tells Duckdns what our current public IP address is. That way we can always use that FQDN, that DNS name, and it will always have our most updated IP. the VNet gateway is deployed in Azure, which is good news. That took about 45 minutes, just so you know. So it is created. So I'm going to click on go to resource. And from in here, you can see the first public IP is giving me my IP addresses. What I need to do now is to go and create my VPN connection. Now, just before I do that, let's go to the local network gateway. I'm going to click on create. I'm going to choose my resource group. I'm going to call mine lab local network gateway, which is fine. The endpoint is going to be FQDN. Now, this local network gateway represents my on-premise network, so I need to give the domain that I've just created with Duckdns. So that was. Now I need to enter the various different subnets that I have in the lab. So I'm just going to enter the different VLANs. So it's 10.10.1.0, 10.0 /24.10.30.0/24. And click on review and create, and then we will create that. What that does is whenever we create our VPN connection, that pretty much tells the VNet in Azure what subnets we have on premise, and that handles all the stuff like routing and stuff, so it tells it how to get to our on-premise network. If you want to add any additional networks, or your pfSense network is different, the networks you enter in the local network gateway have to represent the networks that you actually have created on your pfSense firewall. Let's go back to the VNet gateway. Click in here. Under connections, I'm just going to click on add connection. So this is me configuring the Azure side of the VPN. So the connection type is going to be a site-to-site IPsec VPN. I'm just going to call it VPN to homelab. It's going to be in the UK South for me. Click next for settings. So the virtual network, that's going to be the only one that is in the list. The local network gateway is the one we've just created. The shared, the key. So again, just create a key that you remember. The protocol is going to be IKE version 2. We're going to leave all these as default. Click next. We don't care about tags, and then click review and create. Create. Okay, that is done. So let's click on go to resource and check the configuration. So we will need to make a number of changes here. So I'm just going to switch this to custom, so the IPsec policy. So I'm going to change some of mine. This is going to be AST56. I'm going to put this as SHA-256. This is going to be 14. I'm going to switch this to 256. This one, and yeah, I'm going to leave mine like that. So what I'll do is I'll match up this configuration on my pfSense firewall. Feel free to do some research on the various encryption types that you want to use. I'm just going to use this. So let's go down. Okay, I am happy with that. Click on save. So you'll see that that is going to update that. So it might take a few seconds to actually save it. Once this is done, that is the Azure side of the VPN done. Now we just need to go to the pfSense side. We will configure the VPN, add the various rules, and just hope the VPN comes up. Okay, so the configuration is saved, and let's click on overview at the top. So you can see the status here is unknown. So what we're hoping is that that will eventually say connected, but it won't actually do that until we configure the pfSense side. So now we have the Azure side done. Let's go back to our pfSense firewall and we will configure that side of the site-to-site VPN. So log in your pfSense firewall. Under VPN, we are going to hit on IPsec. Then I'm just going to click on add P1. I'm just going to call this Azure VPN. And key exchange, I am going to leave that. You can set it to IKE version 2 or auto. I'm just going to change them to auto. So it's IPv4 WAN, the remote gateway. So that is the public IP address on the Azure side. So let's go back to Azure. I'm going to go to the virtual network gateway. So you can see my public IP address is here. So it's 172.166. Let's go back here, 172.166. 211.134. Authentication method, we can leave that like that. Okay, we can leave all of this. So my identifier is going to be a fully qualified domain name. This will be the domain you used as part of your Duckdns setup. So that one is for me. So under peer identifier, I'm just going to change mine to any, and then the pre-shared key. So this is the pre-shared key that we entered on the other side. So just enter that in here. Then we need to match our encryption algorithms. You need to match this up with what you've set up previously on the Azure side. So I'm going to change mine to 256. This is already 256, and we had created that group 14 previously, so that is fine. Let's go down. I think that's pretty much it. That's all we really need to set up on this side. So when you've done that, just click on save. So that is the first part of the VPN setup. So let's go and look at phase 2. So click on add P2, and in this side, I'm just going to go Azure VPN-P2. So it's going to be tunnel IPv4. So the local network. So this is our local network across all our environments. So I'm going to change mine to network, and I'm going to say mine is on a 10.10.0.0/16. So that should cover all of the different subnets that I will create on my pfSense network. So when you've done that, move down to remote network. So we need to add what our remote subnet is. So that is a 10.30.0.0/16 network on that side too. I'm just going to change some of these to match. I'm going to enable all of these just for fun. Hash, okay, 256, that's fine. PFS group, we said none, so let's just turn that off. And let's click on save. Once you've done that, you just need to hit on apply changes. That will apply the VPN network changes you've just done. Let's go over and create our firewall rules. So we need to create some rules for this VPN. So click on rules, go over to IPsec. I'm going to create a very, very basic rule here. I'm just going to click on add and leave it as pass. Interface is IPsec, IPv4. I'm just going to change mine to any. I'm going to do source any. I'm just going to allow me to communicate fully with the other side, and then just click on save and apply changes. So now that is done, we just normally have to wait a minute or two, and then let's check and see if the VPN has actually come online. Okay, the rules are done. VPN has been done on both sides. We've did our Dynamic DNS. Let's go and check the VPN to actually see if it's up. And how you can do that is click on status, and then we're going to go down to the IPsec, and you should see the status has established, which is good. So you can see both sides, phase 1 and phase 2 have connected. So let's go back to Azure, open up your VNet gateway, click on connections, and you should see status is connected, which is good, which is what we wanted. So let's test and see if we can actually communicate with any VM. So if I go to virtual machines, I'm going to create a new Azure virtual machine. Let's just again put this in our lab prod resource group. We're going to call it test VM. I'm going to choose the smallest VM I can. So the size is going to be, let's click on see all sizes, and I'm going to choose this one, this B1S. That's going to be perfect. Username Jared, put a decent password in here. That all looks good. Let's click on next. I'm going to choose a standard SSD. Click on next. We're going to choose the networking. So we want it to be in our lab VNet. We want to put it in the default subnet that we created. We do not need a public IP because we're going to communicate with this over the VPN. So I'm going to click on none. NSG we can leave as basic, so just so you know, the NSG won't allow you to ping this device. The Windows VM will probably have a firewall that will also block you from pinging it. So we will allow RDP. So leave it basic. We're going to do inbound ports, just going to allow the selected ports, which is RDP, which is fine. Click on next in management. I'm just going to skip through these. I don't care about these. Next tags. Let's just go to review and create, and click on create. That shouldn't take too long to build Okay, so the VM is done. Let's go to virtual machines and let's get its IP address so we can see that it is using 10.30.1.4. Let's go back to our, in fact, I'm going to open up my domain controller. I don't think I've got RDP installed on my Kali Linux machine, but let's log into this. And what I'll do is I will see if I can RDP to that server. 10.30.1.4. Click connect. Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Oh, it is. So let me see if I can get in. So click on yes, test VM. So it's the VM in Azure. Okay, this VM doesn't seem that responsive, but we know that is up and running anyway. So the VM is there and we can connect to it, which is good. We didn't have a public IP, so at least we know that the site-to-site VPN is 100% up and running, which is good, which is perfect, which is what we wanted. Again, as I said at the start of the video, now that we have that site-to-site VPN up and going, you have unlocked an unlimited amount of resources in the cloud that you can now use. If you want to go back here and if you want to build any of the other services within Azure, you can create private links and you can attach those services to your VNet. You may need to create additional subnets to cover that, but in the VPN we use the 10.30.0/16, so even if you create a bunch of other subnets, you should still be able to route to them over the VPN, which is really good. It just gives you unlimited access to these tools. Before I sign out, I just want to remind you guys that the VPN gateway that you've configured in Azure, you will be charged for that. So whenever you have finished using it, you need to make sure you go in and delete that. And it is really, really simple to do that. Just go into your resource group, go into the lab production and click into each of these to delete them. Now you will need to delete some of these in a particular order. So if you start off with your connection, delete that, then you can delete the local network gateway and then the VNet gateway. And it's pretty simple to do. Just click into this and you just need to click on delete at the top and then click on yes, and that will then go through to delete it. So that is it for today's episode. We have configured our VPN to Azure. If you have followed through each of these episodes to get to this, and you're going to follow this episode and create your VPN on your side, then please let me know in the comment box how it goes, if it actually works. I'm keen to see if most people out there, or even anybody out there, has followed the entire lab and built this at home. I have had a number of different people ask me to make this video way back in the very start, but I feel I kind of needed to do the other ones first so we can have all those tools built. Again, this should help those people that don't have a decent lab server at home. Once you create this VPN, you can build all those tools in one of those subnets, so you should be covered. Before people start dropping comments, and I didn't go into too much depth into the encryption and the VPN, that was on purpose. If I had have done all of that and really went into detail for every single step, this video would be about 5 hours long. So do as much research as you can in the various different configurations that you can use. Even break the VPN and go and reconfigure it if you want. Again, before we leave, thank you so much for watching. This is just the base build of the lab, so I want to go back and go through each of those tools. I do have some other ideas for other series that I want to create as well, so keep an eye out for those in the next few months. I've got some quite good ones coming up. Drop a comment and let me know if you have problems with the lab. I'll try my best to try and help you or point you in the right direction. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.